Today's daf is daf Kuf Beis, and we're going to begin with Omar Rabba Omar of Kahana Omar Rav, and that's about 7 lines down from the bottom. Yovo Eliyahu v'Yomar Choltin b'Minol Shomin Lo. We will accept his words if he tells us that we can use even a minal and we don't need a sandal, but until Eliyahu tells us this and pronounces that choltzim b'minal, then we will only use a sandal. But if Eliyahu would tell us that ein choltzim b'sandal, then ein shomin lo. We cannot be mavatal the minog. Our tradition is, our custom is that we do chalitza with a sandal, and we will not change and uproot that tradition. Shekvar nagu ha'am b'sandal, and that's minog, which is mavatal halach. A minol is made of or rach, soft leather, and it covers the leg, the foot on all sides. It's made from many different pieces of or, and it's added together to form a shoe. And kosher es haminol al haregel imritzuos ktsaros sheyotzos lidei liad ha'ekev v'niksharos me'al haminol b'mokom hasruchim shel yamino. So we have these ritzuos, short straps that come out of the heel of the shoe, and they're tied on top of the minol on the right side, and that's called a minol. A sandal, on the other hand, is osui mi or kosher, not from soft leather, but rather hard leather. Umechases a regel rak mitachtia, only covers the leg, the foot on the underside of the foot. Ubisfasos hat sandal, on the ends of the sandal, hasuya mugba ktsas lehachzik es sandal ala regel. And it's made not of smaller pieces of leather, but of one solid piece of leather. The kosher is a sandal ala regel. In ritzuos haruchos, not those short straps, but rather long straps. Shmachdisen oson be oznayim haosui michatichas or shiyotzis mitzidei sandals. You have those two like ears that come out from the sides of the sandal, and that's where we place the ritzuos. And kosher osam al gabe regel umeachore regel. Rav Yosef Omer of Kahana Marav im Yovel Yov Yomer in Choltzim b'Minol Shomin Lo. But again, as long as Eliyahu does not come and tell us to exclude a minol, then we will use a minol. But sandal, as we said before, is an unshakable, unquestionable tradition. Ein choltzin. If Eliyahu would tell us that we don't do chalitza b'sandal, ein shomin lo, we would not be mavatal the minig as we saw earlier. Shekvar nagu on b'sandal. My beinayu, what's the difference between Rabba's formulation and that of Rav Yosef? Iku beinayu minol lechatchila. To be choletz with a minol lechatchila, and Eliyahu has not yet come, and now he comes and he says ein choltzim b'minol. The Rabba, according to Rabba, ein choltzim bo. Rav Yosef choltzim bo. So Rav Yosef says that we don't listen to Eliyahu Hanavi, but only because there was an established minog to use a minol as chalitza. But in a place where lechatchila, as in the period of time before Eliyahu came and declared ein choltzim b'minol, Rav Yosef is going to say that Elio cannot change the minhag, and therefore cholzin, whereas Rabbah would say that we have to listen and oblige Rabbi Elio Hanavi, who says ein cholzin b'minol. Now, I'm not sure exactly how the Gemara knows this. Let's see it again and see if we can figure it out. We have Rabbah and Rav Yosef. Rabbah was the first man the Yomi. He says that if Elio would come and tell us that ein cholzin b'minol, ein shomin lo, and Rav, who is quoted by Rav Yosef, says him Yov Elio v'yomar ein cholzin b'minol shomin lo. So in other words, until Elio comes and he makes his declaration, then we'll be choletz even l'chatchilu with a minol. But when Elio says ein cholzin b'minol, then we listen to him, which is not true according to Rabbah, who says that im Yov Elio v'yomar cholzin b'minol, but ein cholzin b'minol ein shomin lo. Now, I don't see where Rabbah says that in other words, by implication, Rabbah is saying that we won't listen to Elio if he says ein cholzin b'sandal, but we would apparently listen to him if he says ein cholzin b'minol. And Rav Yosef insists that im Yov Elio v'yomer ein cholzin b'minol. So 1 second, Rav Yosef would say, so my mistake. We're talking before Elio Hanavi declared ein cholzin b'minol. And here's where we have an afkamina, where the lechatchila, before Elio Hanavi came to make his pronouncement ein cholzin b'minol, what will we do with a minol? And Rabbah says that we would need Elio Hanavi to tell us that cholzin b'minol, because lechatchila, before Elio came, we were not cholitz b'minol. Whereas Rabbah says that we are cholitz b'minol, and then if Elio Hanavi comes to tell us ein cholzin b'minol, then shomin lo. So the Gemara has the following kasha l'man diyomar, according to Man Diyomar, who says, and that's the sheet of Rabbi Yosef, that afilu lechatchila we used a minol that was even before Elio Hanavi came to the scene, and now Elio says ein cholzin b'minol. But now we learned in our Mishnah cholzin b'minol chalitzasa kshera, and the implication is the eved in lechatchila lo, and yet, according to Rav Yosef, unless Elio Hanavi would come and say ein cholzin b'minol, we were cholitz b'minol, and it's mashma even lechatchila. How do we square Rav Yosef with our Mishnah? And the Gemara answers, "Hu adin diafilu lechatchila minol is kosher even lechatchila." And that which the Mishnah says in the Lashon b'di'eved, that chalitzasa kshera, that's aidi deboy lemisnei seifa banfilia chalitzasa psula afilu b'di'eved pananami reisha Lashon b'di'eved. So it's one of those idis to maintain the symmetry. Now the Gemara wants to explain the machlokas shin Rabbah and Rav Yosef regarding minol lechatchila. Rabbah says ein cholzin lechatchila, and Rav Yosef says cholzin. And the Gemara suggests that minol lechatchila tanoi. This machlokas shin Rabbah and Rav Yosef is really an earlier machlokas tanoim. This Sanya we learned in a brisa. Rav Yosef, Pam achas halachti l'nitziven. I went to a place called Nitziven. I found there a zaken echad amarti lo klumat habaki Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Do you know? Would you recognize or tell me where to find Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira? I'm a lihen. Yal shulchani utadir. He eats at my table constantly. They asked Rabbi Yossi, Klumra Isa. I mean, Rabbi Yossi now continues to ask the Zaken Echad, who was Meshamesh, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Klumra Isa Shechaletz b'Yevamot. Did you ever see him supervise a chalitza? Amali Ra'isi Shechaletz harbe piyamim. So Rabbi Yossi asks him now, the minol of his sandal. What did he use for chalitza, minol or a sandal? Amali. So Zakin says, "V'chicholtzim b'minol," meaning chalitza b'minol psua. The Torah says na'alo, not minol. Amarti lo, I said to the Zaken, and came, are you telling me that kishacholza b'minol psula chalitza ma ra Rabbi Meir lomar cholza b'minol chalitzasa kshera? And Rabbi Yaakov over Mishmo, in the name of Rabbi Meir, cholza b'minol lechatchila. We see here that there's a machlokas between Rav and Rav Yosef that's about minol kosher lechatchila lechatchila. That's really a machlokas in Tanoim. According to Rav Yossi in the sheet of Rabbi Meir's kosher minol lechatchila. I'm sorry. According to Rabbi Yaakov in the sheet of Rabbi Meir, minol lechalitza is kosher even lechatchila. According to Rabbi Yossi in the sheet of Rabbi Meir, minol is kosher only b'diavad. So the Gemara raises the following question. According to the opinion of Rabbah, and we saw it also in the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov in the name of Rabbi Meir. I'm sorry, of Rabbi Yossi in the name of Rabbi Meir. That lechatchila lo, we don't allow chalitza with a minol. My timer, why is minol excluded? Elam, if you can tell me, should be panta me'al the arkisa me'al de me'al, that the leather or hanal is al. What does that mean? Me'al. Al haregel me'al harag. Which means that arkasa, the laces that tie the nal, al gabia or shala regel, may al dumial. The laces are already on to the top part of his leg. So whereas the nal is on his foot, but the leather straps are that connect the nal to his body are al ragla. And chalitza has to be implemented al yidei taras hasruchim. The Torah says that she has to take off and loosen the straps. Torah omro v'cholza nalo me al ragla, from his foot. The chalitza should be right on top of his foot. V'lo me al dumial, but not all the way on top of his leg. Me'al d'me'al ragla. V'lo me'al d'me'al. And therefore there should not be permission to be choletz with a minol, but rather with a sandal, because there the straps are tied immediately on top of his foot. So now the Gemara says, according to your logic, afilu di'evid namila. How could we machshir? Everybody agrees that to the Eved we could machshir minol for chalitza, And now the Torah is excluding a minol from chalitza because it's me'al de me'al. Which leads us to the following logical conclusion, that we can only use a sandal. And even those who say that chalitza is besandal dafka, that's only lechatchila, but b'eved, if he does the chalitza with a minol, is even that Mandiam agrees that it's shera. So it can't be that the reason why minol lechatchila was excluded is because of the psula me'al de me'al, because if that be the case, then the evidence should be possible as well. So therefore, we have to conclude that the psula of me'al is not shayach, because the ikar chalitza is sheishoyer haregel megula, below now, to expose the foot without a shoe. And even if the chalitza is done with a minal, the foot is exposed. So at this point in the Gemara is saying that minal is not excluded under the law of me'al and me'al, because again, if that be the case, then even b'di'evid, the chalitza would be psula. So therefore, we're going to come to the conclusion that it's not shayach here to say there's a psula me'al de me'al, because again, the purpose and the ultimate essential goal of the chalitza is to be magala the regel. And now there's no nal covering the regel. And even b'minal, the regel becomes magula when he removes, or she removes the minal. And in essence, now the question becomes the exact opposite. Why is a minal excluded lechatchila for chalitza? And Gemara answers, Gzeira mishum minal merupat. A nal is made up of soft leather, as we said. And if it's ripped on the top, then you cannot use it for chalitza. But he might be tempted to use it for chalitza because once you're allowing chalitza with a minol, they might come to use even a mafura, which means even if it's karua, it's mevuka milamala. And why would he be tempted to do so? Because since a minol is made out of soft leather, then it sits on his regel, even if it was ripped. And we're afraid that he might use that minol for chalitza. Maybe he thinks it's enough that you can walk with it. And it's miyushav al regel. But once it's karua, it's pasul chalitza. He says here, Ein ze nechshav shayivama cholza na'alo, ela hareu kecholutz me'ela. That's the psul of karua. It's not considered that the Yevamot removed his shoe. Inami, another reason why we pasel na lechatchila is gzeira mishum chatzi minol. Okay, what's chatzi nal? Shenisha rak chatzi nal. And once again, we come back to describing the middle as rach. It's very soft leather. And he can set it up on his foot, even if it's only chatzi now. Honestly, I don't know what happened to the other chatzi now. So again, because of the soft nature of the leather of the nal, we're afraid that maybe he'll use this nal for chalitza, even if it's a chatzi nal, because yochol yashmo beraglo. Now he points out in the note here that a chatzi sandal is not misyashiv al raglo, so we don't have to worry about the gzera mishum chatzi sandal, only mishum chatzi minol. Amarav he loved the chamite lechavivi. If not for the fact that I saw my uncle Rabbi Chia de cholatz besandal used a wide, comfortable sandal, the islay shenotzin, and it has these straps to tie it down to the regel, because again it's very wide. If not for that, anan lo avi chalitzna, I wouldn't have used this wide sandal for chalitza. Ela besandala de taya are roim, shepherds, and they manufacture sandal lefi godol raglo. It's got to be fit for the regel. It's like custom made. B'makom chibur regel mashal. The mahadek tfei. It can be tied down to the regel more in a very strong way. And as long as the nal is mudekes yoser, as long as the nal is mudekes, and this is called mahadek tfei, the more it's mudekes, adif. That makes it a real, prominent, profound chalitza, because it's mahudek tfei. V'hai didan, and our nal of chalitza, reports Rav, afal gav de ispe chumrata, is nevertheless katrinon be misna. So it seems that Rav was not so excited about the chalitza supervised by his uncle Reb Chia Besandal, the Islay Shinson or Shenson, that it was a wide kind of a shoe and you needed those straps in order to tie it down to make up for the fact that it was wide. And Rav says he himself, if not for his uncle, would have advocated chalitza with a sandal of the taya. We said the taya was roim, the shepherds. Apparently, they have a kind of a custom-made shoe that fits the foot. And not only that, it's also b'makom chibur haregel mashok. It apparently where the foot reaches the thigh, the leg, the upper leg, that's where they tie it together, and they tie it very tight. And the tighter you tie it, the better it is in terms of improving the chalitza. Then Rav describes our minhag, meaning his minhag in his time. What did they use for a nal of chalitza? They used a nal that had chumrata, which are called crossim. In English, you call them hooks or clasps. So that would apparently tie together one end of the shoe to the top end of the shoe. And then they would put into these loops a hook. The hook would go all the way into the loops at the front of the shoe. And then they would tie down the shoe to the leg with a strap that was made of leather, and they would wrap around this strap around the leg to make it very tight. So therefore, the chalitza would be a serious chalitza, would be very much tied down. The sandal is very much tied down tightly to the leg, and therefore she has to exert, extra effort to take off the ritzuos and then remove the regel. Rav Yehuda Marav Hatoras Yevamot l'shuk b'shmitas rov ha'akev. At what moment in time does the chalos matir of Yevama, meaning allowing her to get married to anyone, take effect? And he says as soon as most of the heel of the leg has been separated by her from the sandal. And even though it's only rove, that's sufficient. So part of the regel is still attached, in a sense, to the sandal, but most of it, and specifically the akev, is already removed from the sandal, and that's enough to be considered a chalitza kshera. However, l'chatchila, she should remove the entire sandal. Meisvei will ask a kasha on this ruling of Rav Yehuda Marav, a yavam shehutru, shelo yedeya isha, ritzuos minol v'sandal. All right, so we're talking about the yavam, and he loosened the ritzuos, the straps around the middle and the sandal, which he's wearing, and then she just simply took off his shoe. Oh, here's another scenario. She took off the straps, she loosened the straps, and the yavam lifted up his foot from the minnow, rov haregel. And then at the very end, the choletzes, completely detached the minnow from his leg. In all these cases, the Brisa paskins chalitzasa psula. It means that the Yevama, according to this Brisa, is required to loosen the straps and then tashmo tanal, and then remove the shoe. And that's accomplished by loosening the straps, and then she can remove the shoe. And all this is part of the chalitza. So Taima, why was this considered chalitza psula in the cases mentioned in this brisa? The shamat who? Because it was the yavam who removed most of his foot from the shoe. Hashamta he. If the Yevama would have just removed most of the foot from the nal, then it would be kshera. And the Brisa seems to be assuming that in the case where the chalitza's kshera, when she removes the shoe, that's like the scenario which would passel the chalitza when he removes his leg. So he removes his leg or most of his leg, which is rov, that passes the chalitza. Had she removed most of his leg and disconnected it from the model, that would be a kosher chalit. Rov regel in. We should learn from this brisa that if she removes most of his foot from the now, that's called a chalitza kshera. But shamat rov ha'akev lo. But if she removed most of his heel and disconnected it from the foot, from the shoe, from the now, that would not be sufficient. So rov akev is possible. And that's exactly the opposite of what Rav said. That rov akev is kosher. And Gemara says lo. you're learning it that it's Dafka Rov Regel, Hainu Rov HaRegel, Hainu Rov HaOkev. Now, the Brisa may use these terms interchangeably. And even if the Brisa seems to indicate that in a case of Rov HaOkev, it's Psula, but it's referring to Rov HaRegel as well. But my Karile Rov HaRegel, why does the case of Rov HaOkev get the description of Rov HaRegel? The Kula Chela Kare Aleim Dechas. Because all of the weight of his body and the power and the regel is that's a force that goes down and it puts pressure on the foot, and he can stand up on the ground and be supported because of the pressure of the foot. And it's lochetz ala okev, right? It puts specific pressure on the heel of his foot. But the main point here is Hainu Rov HaRegel, Hainu Rov HaOkev. Mesayele l'Rabbi Yanai, the Brisa of Hutra Ritzuos Minol V'Sandal, that the Yevamot has to untie the laces and then be choletz the nal. That's the support from Yadom Rabbi Yani ben Hitir, who v'shamta he, ben shehitira he v'shamad hu, chalitzas psula ad shetatir he v'tashmidi. The chalitza is only valid if she does both A plus B. She is matir, meaning she loosens the straps, the laces, and she removes the shoe. Boy, Rabbi Yanai, kra'asu mahu. Let's say that she rips the nal off the leg of the choletz, of the yavam. Right? She literally rips off the nal. Instead of doing hashmata, to be mashmid, she rips it off. And it rips the nal. Another example, srafast. She burns the nal. Again, I don't know how she does this without burning his foot. Now, is that a chalitza ksher? So the Gemara now analyzes the tzadei asafik. Number one, galui kara be'inon ve'ika. The essence of chalitza is to reveal the foot, which was covered by the nal, and that's what she did. O dilma, shall we say, chalitza mamish be'inon, and she has to be choletz the nal from his regel, remove it, vileka, and she didn't do so. She may have ripped it, but she didn't remove it. She may have burnt it, but she didn't remove it. Teku, the Gemara leaves it as an unanswered question. Boy, minei Rav Nechemya mi Rabba. Name in olam zel gabzem out. What if he's wearing two shoes, one on top of the other? Hechi domin. Ilem de shalfate li luye v'koi tatoi. She only removed his top leg, his top minnow, but she left the minnow tachton on his regel. And the question that was being asked here was this a fulfillment of the mitzvah of chalitza, because maybe she has to reveal his leg and now he's still attached to the lower minnow. Is here, in this case, she never really exposed his regel because he's still covered by the nal hatachto. But if the mitzvah is not more than just the chalitza, she did a ma'isa chalitza. She took a nal off his leg. So the Gemara says that's impossible. to interpret the suffix and the study as suffix of Rebbe Nehemiah, in that light is an untenable position. Why? Because the Torah says, "Becholta nalo me'al raglo amrachman," and we darshan that the nal of chalitza has to be me'al raglo, velo me'al de me'al. Here the nal is me'al de me'al, and where it says lo tzricha, what's the shela? What was the suffix? The vacillation of Rabbi Nehemiah. The karate li'iluye ushalfete l'tatoi. She ripped off the top nal, the outer nal, and then she took the nal atachtona derech chur hanal helyon. So right, she ripped a hole, an opening in the nal helyona, and now she takes out the nal tachtona through that hole. The koi ilai, and the nal helyona is still on his leg. So she ripped it and made a hole, but the Elyona is still on a leg. My chalitza bina va'ika. At the end of the day, she took the inner nal through the hole and removed it from its leg. That's called chalitza. That's sufficient. Dilma, shall we say that giluye ka'ara be'ina? We need that she exposed his regel. The leka, and here in this case, he's got a nail on top that covers, although it's ripped, but it covers his leg. So his foot is not completely exposed. And here on the top of Kuf Beis Amid Beis, the Gemara asks, Umika ki hai gavna, is there such a thing as a person who puts two shoes on his foot? That's not derech ha'olam, to wear shnei min olam. So therefore, even if the Yavam in fact wore two min olam and the Yevamot was choletz, both of them, it should not be considered chalitza. It's like chalitza b'minal. What kind of minal? A minal shelo roi lo lechespo. A minal has to be something functional that he can walk on the minal. And the Gemara says, there are people who wear taka two shoes, one on top of the other. He left his house wearing 5 pairs of muki, l'shuka. Muki is the cloth, the lavad, and it's very tough. In the Hebrew translation, he used the word lamed beis daled, which translates into felt, and we're talking about heavy, tough felt. And he left his house with 5 pairs of heavy felt wrapped around his feet, and that's how he went out to the shul. We see it's quite possible to wear more than one shoe.